There's a Bioware game I keep coming back to when I hear Bertie Purchese telling me all about the several hours he spent playing Dragon Age The Veilguard, and it's probably not the game you're expecting me to say. It's not Dragon Age Inquisition, and it's not Dragon Age Origins, or even Dragon Age 2. It's a game from another series the studio is probably better known for, and arguably it's the studio's best. It's Mass Effect 2. Just as Mass Effect 2 streamlined role-playing in Mass Effect 1, honing it into a pacier cinematic action game, Veilguard does this for Dragon Age. There are no pretensions at being an open-world game as in Inquisition. The Veilguard is a narrower, mission-based game, and, because of it, the pace never sags. Whatever you do, there's a feeling of purpose and shape to it. Missions crescendo to spectacular boss fights, with cinematic encounters leading to them that feel considered and satisfying. Traversal sections are varied with puzzles and zip wires and slides and balance beams. There's never any dead time, always there's momentum, and, at its best, it's a breathlessly exciting ride. To me, it screams confidence, something the Dragon Age team seems to have lacked in the past. This is a series that's grappled with its identity ever since it began, and that's changed hugely from one installment to the next. And okay, yes, it is noticeable that the lines between Dragon Age and Mass Effect are blurring, whereas before the teams and games have felt distinct, but there's no denying that the resulting effect here is a good one. Dragon Age The Veilguard is good. It's very good. I'm Zoe Delahunty-Light, and although I didn't get hands-on with Dragon Age The Veilguard, Bertie Purchese did, and he was kind enough to share his preview and impressions with me. You can read his full preview on Eurogamer.net, but until then, you're here with me, so sit back and let me tell you what I know. Bertie began his demo day at the very beginning of the game in character customization, which, I'm pleased to report, is as feature-rich as I think a lot of us hoped and expected it to be. There are 4 races to choose from: human, Qunari, dwarf or elf, and you can customize the shapes of their bodies as well as intricately sculpt the shapes of their faces. Bertie was particularly fond of the triangular slide-around gauge for face, body shape and structure, which is fun to play with and see the effects in real time, and of the hair, which is some of the most believable looking hair I've ever seen in a game. More unusual features include customizable bulge size for exactly what you think it's for, a melanin slider, and a cataract slider for the eye or eyes. You can specify. There's a lot of detail here. I have an entire video coming out about the character creator and romance alone, so keep an eye out for that. There is so much to say about it. Anyway, another notable character creation feature includes creating or importing an Inquisitor from Dragon Age Inquisition. If you don't have an Inquisitor, no worries, you can create and customize one, which involves visual customization as well as cycling through major story decision points from the previous game to choose what you would have done. This serves a similar purpose to the Keep feature in Inquisition and, indeed, replaces it. The other thing you can do while customizing a character is to pick your faction in the game, of which there are several, and from which your main companions will originate. Some you'll know, like the Grey Wardens or the Antivan Crows, whereas the others are new. They all offer a storied background to layer upon your character, as well as some mechanical benefits. Grey Wardens, for example, deal increased damage to Darkspawn, of which there are many, and they have slightly increased base health and defense. Being a Grey Warden also enables you to choose Grey Warden dialogue options when they appear. It all reminded Bertie somewhat of the origin stories from Dragon Age Origins, and there were several references to his faction in parts of the game he played, which is nice. Bertie chose his Rook to be a rogue, after which he played the section of the game you've seen trailered in Minrahus, up to and past the point of meeting Solas and then beyond, A good hour or more beyond, actually, which means both he and I know what happens to Varric, but we are sworn to secrecy. He saw the new lighthouse base and the Arlathan forest, and the crossroads beyond the Alluvian Mirror. He adventured in the city of Treviso and an underwater city, and he struggled through eerie, blight-infested towns riddled with darkspawn and zombified inhabitants. He battled dragons, fought ogres, and clashed with demons, evil mages, and twisted monstrosities. He did a lot, and the Veilguard provided variety and visual spectacle throughout. No two areas looked or felt the same, and from a video producer point of view who spends hours combing through footage to bring you the best bits, it's the best I've seen a Bioware game ever look. Bertie tried all 3 character classes over the course of the day at varying character levels, and Rogue emerged as his favourite. It's to do with the speed of the class, the way it twirls and tumbles around the battlefield, giving the action an almost Ninja Gaiden-like feel. And there's a never-ending, simple pleasure in trying to land headshots with the bow and arrow. The warrior came pretty close with its Captain America-like shield toss though, and with its dropkick, which is ridiculous fun, particularly near the edge of a cliff. Run up and bam, multiple enemies go flying. It's a very physical game. The Veilguard actually plays more like an action game than a traditional RPG. All of the classes have a full complement of combat abilities as standard. They can dodge or dash and perform some kind of ranged attack, and block, as well as attack with light or medium hits and charged variations of them, and you will frequently have to use all of them to survive. You're never safe, even at the back. Enemies won't leave you alone. They'll teleport or dash to get at you, closing gaps and hurling projectiles your way. It's challenging, and there's a lot of running and dodge rolling required to deal with it. Also, just a quick note, there are more difficulty options than I've ever seen in a Bioware game if you want to adjust this. While you don't have direct control over what your 2 companions do, you do have some control over their special abilities. On a controller, you can press a shoulder button to bring up a radial menu where you and your companions' special abilities are shown. Here, the game will highlight any abilities that work well against the enemy you're facing, and any abilities that will combo with your companions. It's big and obvious, you really can't miss it. Set it all up and big damage numbers will pop up on the screen alongside dramatic visual effects. Combined attacks are hugely effective and incredibly satisfying to do. There is, though, a bit of a wait in between using them, either as you recover your class's main resource or wait for the ability to refresh. I'm sure as you get to know the game better, you'll be able to manage resource gain more efficiently and power special abilities more often, but Bertie told me he often found himself waiting around a lot with nothing very effective that he could do, particularly as a mage. There were his default attacks, he liked the proton pack-like energy beam, but he told me that he still kinda felt ineffective most of the time. I should add that each class has 3 specializations plus a load of miscellaneous skills and abilities interlinking them, so it's more than possible it's the build Bertie didn't gel with rather than the class, but the mage was still his least favourite of the 3 classes to play. Combat in general, though, was great. It's remarkable how far Dragon Age games have come in this regard. It doesn't even feel like an RPG anymore, but an action game full of energy and heft and impact, and the need for you to be awake and paying attention at all times. And because of the mission-based structure, any encounter you do come across is there because it's been selected to be there, not because you randomly came upon it, so there's a considered mix of enemy types spread thoughtfully around in order to make the encounter interesting, which they almost always are. This kind of consideration carries over into level design. Again, because you're taking the route the game knows you'll take, it's made sure the route is an interesting one. So you'll be walking along balance beams between buildings, jumping across platforms, climbing, doing a bit of environmental puzzling, and sliding down inclines like Commander Shepard. It's never just running from point A to B. In the city of Treviso, where we meet the assassin companion Lucanus, a place of nighttime markets and softly lit lanterns, we zipline across the rooftops at dizzying speed, giving the whole place a sense of size and the level a sense of pace. Of course, it's all an illusion. You'll walk these same routes again and again if you pay attention, and though the city appears densely populated and buzzing, you can't really interact with the people you see there. It's all set dressing. But it's beautiful set dressing, and how interactive does it really need to be? There's a lot about Veilguard that falls into this category of thinking. Does an RPG really need it? You don't loot bodies in the game and scarcely spend any time in your inventory because you don't need to. Loot has been tidied away to chests, which you rip open with a God of War-like glee, and if there's new equipment inside, there's an upgrade system whereby new items will usually upgrade something you already have, helping keep your bags and mind clutter-free. It's a continuation of the work you can see underpinning Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, but streamlined further still. The cornerstone of a Bioware game, according to Bioware, is your companions, so a lot of focus has been put on them. Bertie eventually met all of them during his various play sessions, though he spent much more time with Harding, Ballara, and Knave, all of whom he found interesting enough. There's an element of hamminess to each of them, but then it's a hammy kind of game overall. How deep each of their stories will go, we can only guess. You can, of course, romance them, and you'll do most of your talking back at your lighthouse base, which is located inside the Fade, the place where magic is drawn from. Bertie tried a bit of flirting with Harding and Knave and Lucanus. I would do the same, honestly. And it's very reminiscent of previous Dragon Age games. A heart icon shows the flirtatious answer you can give. It's all mild stuff so far. The lighthouse area itself is a place of floating platforms and improbable architecture, and, over time, each of your companions will occupy different dormant parts of it, where you can venture out to meet them. There's a nice time-saving feature I actually really like, whereby a kind of floating light will illuminate outside their buildings to denote they have a story moment just waiting within, which saves you traipsing around all the time, trying to make sure you don't miss any of those story points. That is an issue I had with Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm really glad that they're signposting it this clearly. You'll also be able to, I believe, customize the lighthouse in some way, although Bioware is staying very close-lipped about how. Despite playing a day's worth of the Veilguard, it's still tricky to get a sense of the game overall, not least because Bertie had only played parts of one act in a 3-act game. It's an enormously confident showing, and personally, I am so pleased to see Bioware in this kind of form, but how much depth and choice there is, I'm still unsure. Dialogue choices to Bertie felt more like different flavours of the same answer, rather than different answers in themselves, and the overall thrust of the game felt like one path with deviations, rather than many different routes. There are big choices, there are choices that change entire cities, but these are main quest moments carefully written into the overarching story. They're not the many smaller choices we rely upon to create our own tapestries. Then again, Mass Effect 2 didn't offer that, and look how history has remembered it. As a cinematic action game, The Veilguard roars with quality, and as a role-playing game, it provides a refreshing tonic to the density of Baldur's Gate 3, which it will no doubt be compared against, though perhaps it would be better considered complementary to. Following our very long chat, Bertie's final impression of the game was that it left him with no doubt The Veilguard will be an enjoyable ride. Both of us just wonder how memorable that ride will be. And that's all I've got for you today. A massive thanks to Bertie for sharing his impressions of Dragon Age The Veilguard with me. You can read his full preview of Dragon Age The Veilguard on Eurogamer.net. If you want to hear more about Dragon Age The Veilguard, then feel free to sub to Eurogamer and like this video, as I, Zoe Delahunty-Light, will be bringing you all the Dragon Age Veilguard content you can stomach. Now, I'm going to go and mentally prepare for the depth of Veilguard's character creators, so I'll see you folks next time.